I put this video on there and my conversion rates went from about 7% to 22%. So it was just 2 messages came in. They'd ring me up straight away afterwards. I nailed it. It was amazing. Just create your core video content, put your heart and soul into that.
This is the Content Capitalists Podcast. We talk to business owners who've used video to grow their businesses to $1 million a year or more. How they did it, what worked, what didn't. Welcome to the Content Capitalists with your host, Ken Okazaki.
Welcome to another episode of the Content Capitalist Podcast, where we have conversations with people who are doing at least $1 million a year in their business off the back of creating content, especially video. Now, today we've got a special guest with me. Up until now, we've been having conversations with people who have business coaching businesses who've been building like medical empires and things like that. But today we're going to talk with somebody who's actually on the other side and helping these guys to reach the kind of success that we've been talking about. So his name is Tom Breeze, and he's mostly known as the YouTube ads guy because for the last, nearly a decade, he's been mastering and learning and implementing everything to do with ads on YouTube. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ken. Good to be here, buddy.
Absolutely. Tom, when I first saw you, I think it was like your 3 a.m. or something, and we're inside of like a group mentorship program. And when I saw you, I was like, wow, what if I get asked to be on a talk at 3 a.m.? I hope I look as good as he does because it looked like it was, the middle of the day for you. You looked absolutely like you had all your senses about, and your energy was great. And that was my first impression, if that's worth anything to you.
I have 3 very young kids, and so they tend to keep me up at strange hours. So I'm constantly jet lagged or baby lagged, let's say. So I'm kind of used to strange hours of the evening to start doing podcasting and training sessions and things. So I can get up. It only takes me about 4 hours to do my hair, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, good job on the hair. Tom, what I want to do is, first of all, go a little bit further back into some of like the getting started stages in YouTube, some of the mistakes you made, and then you go into what's working today. And the other thing I want to cover today, because I think the audience is going to be especially interested, is where are people wasting their money when it comes to ads on YouTube? What are the mistakes you're seeing all the time? Especially, I know as an agency, this happens. People bring you on and you look through their stuff and you're like, these are the things I see all the time that people are doing wrong. And I think that if you could share those things, that people listening are going to feel absolutely like they got tons of value out of this. And they'll probably save themselves a lot of money just by listening to the rest of this podcast. Hint, hint, guys, keep listening. We're going to be dropping bombs. Tom, get us started. How did you first become interested in this YouTube platform and using it for yourself?
Okay, cool. So lots to unpack there. Okay, so I'll give you the short of of my background. So studied psychology at university and fell in love with the subject. And I feel like I've still a student since the age of like 19. Been studying psychology ever since, really. And I get to apply it to everything I do today, especially when running campaigns for clients. And it's I feel like I'm really lucky that I went into that kind of area. And when I was at university, I went on to do my master's afterwards. And then I went to go and train in various disciplines around psychology. So different practices. Some of the more kind of focused ones were things like neurolinguistic programming and hypnotherapy, timeline therapy, lots of different types of therapy, because I wanted to basically work one-to-one with clients and help them overcome kind of anxiety-related issues and that type of thing. And I was 25 by the time I graduated, and not that many people want to listen to a 25-year-old about how to run their lives. So I kind of specialized in just focusing on anxiety. That was the one thing. And because I was based in London at the time, I realized that the biggest anxiety that most Londoners have is really like that performance anxiety. It's standing in front of a crowd and speaking, or being in a meeting and feeling confident. And so that's kind of what I majored on. And really
Can I ask you a quick question? Because this, as you said, performance anxiety, I know that's used in, like what you just said. And there's also the sexual side of things where people can't have, pleasant or pleasurable sex because of that. Is it pretty much the same part of your brain that's causing both things, or are they like, is it 2 different situations? as a psychology major?
Yeah, wow, that would be a difficult one for me to answer. I think that kind of very different underlying issues probably in both those things. So one is like, well, unless you're having lots of orgies and then you're having sex in public, that might be starting to merge the two, right? So that's
or starting another that or combining the two on video, right? That would be.
Yeah, that's how I got into YouTube advertising.
Were you in front or behind the camera lens?
I liked it both. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm glad you said the camera there. So when it came to that's, I don't know. Do you know what? That's an interesting one because I think there's kind of probably a level of intimacy and playing out that kind of. I don't know. I'm not qualified as a sex therapist, for 100% sure of that.
But the psychology there must be a lot of wires that are, kind of parallel, right? In the brain, I mean.
I would have thought so. There's probably kind of like when it comes, like, so when we used to work with anxiety, there's a lot of, it's one of those emotions that's actually quite easy to remove unless it's kind of like deep anxiety that's been generalized across multiple areas or like post-traumatic stress or something. I wouldn't have dealt with that type of stuff. It'd be more kind of like someone is giving a presentation or a best man speech or whatever it would be that could be coming up that's on the diary. And they're thinking to themselves, I'm gonna have to call in sick in a couple of weeks' time. So I'll start coughing now. And then by the time it's 2 weeks' time, that'll be believable that I've missed my big presentation. And so people go through this whole thing. But I worked out that if I worked with someone for like 3 hours, not only could I get rid of the major part of that anxiety, but I could get to the point where they're kind of really confident and they could stand up, give their presentation. That's kind of where I majored. That kind of the focus was. And with anything, like as soon as you're 2 minutes into a presentation, the confidence starts coming in. You're like, hang on a second, I can do this. And it's very fulfilling very quickly. And then it feels great, to stand in front of a group and present on something you know about, and it feels really, and you can see the audience responding to you. The anxiety goes real quick, and so that was kind of like, it was such a great thing to work on with clients because it would be they'd ring me up straight away afterwards. Like, I nailed it. It was amazing. And I never had anyone that kind of screwed it up completely. But people would always say, oh, it could have been better, but I got through it. And they gave me the promotion or whatever it would be that was most important for them at that time. They managed to deliver what they had to do. So it was that's what I did for a long time.
And you said that this was around 25 years old that you're doing this. And just for reference, what year was that?
So I'm 39 now. So that was what kind of 14 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
And so when it came, I was running the business and I was really fortunate. I say fortunate, like if you're in the game long enough, opportunities and lucky breaks come along pretty much all the time, right? So I've lost you there, Ken. I don't know where you've gone. There you go. You're back. So when it came to when I was running the business, I was kind of doing anything I could to try and work with clients. And I hadn't really got any clients yet when I first started. So I did all the traditional stuff that kind of got recommended to me by friends, which is like, go and get some PR. And I managed to get into some big magazines because I was lucky I had some connections. And I was like, I can't wait for the phone to start ringing. It's going to be manic. And literally no one rang. I think I got like one phone call or something over the space of like 4 weeks.
So when you say PR back then, was that like print material as well or just web stuff?
Oh, no, that was written. So actually not even web stuff. So the internet was kind of still pretty early days, to be honest. It was not like you could write your own articles, but there was no magazines online just yet.
So where were you getting published with the PR?
The biggest one I got was the Evening Standard, which is like a magazine that goes out in the UK, especially in London. And that was kind of one of the most read magazines at the time that was more credible. So I was like, okay, this is going to be a really good opportunity for me. And just nothing. I got into another couple of, I kind of paid for some advertorial spaces and other publications and things and didn't really work out. And I thought, oh, okay, well, how do we figure out this marketing piece? How do I get clients? I think any therapist kind of goes through the same process of like actually being very skilled, but not having a clue about how to actually get any clients through the door. And because I just started my business, the big thing that was really lucky for me was that Google sent me through a leaflet through the door. I didn't even use Google at the time. I used to use Yahoo. So I was like about to discard it. And it was like a £30, which is about like $40 USD, credit to use on their platform for advertising. And so I knew what Google was. It was a search engine, but it was like, I didn't realize like just the everyday person could run ads. I was like, oh, that's just reserved for big brands and that's how they do it. And so they gave me, so I had this credit, I punched in the code and I was able to run ads. So I think I had to spend £30 of my spend and then they would match it with £30 of Google spend. So I had like £60 to play with. And went through the kind of like the online training of how it works. And it literally was just the text ads. That's all I had on the search results. And so I said, right, if someone types in fear of public speaking, I want my ad to show in the London area. That was kind of as simple as it got. And I run traffic to my website, which was literally just a bit about me and a contact form. And so it was like name, email, message box, submit, and that would just send me an email. And I used to capture, well, I don't think I did at the start, but it used to send me an email if someone's in touch. I didn't even know how to capture the emails, but I worked out how to do that once I started studying a bit more about marketing. And I used to just call these people back. Now, on the first day I ran it, I managed to get the phone calls coming through immediately. And I got 2 phone calls, which was more than I ever had for about, I think it was about like something like $20 or something, or £20.
And so this is inbound now. Like you're not calling, they leave their contact and you call them, or they're just calling you in?
They would leave like a name, email, and a message and press submit. My phone number was on the website, but I didn't really.
Okay. No, it's actually better that way.
So it was just 2 messages came in. I called them both back and I managed to close the business. And so what I used to do is take a deposit and then I would take the main payment from when I do what we used to call it a breakthrough session. So I used to kind of, as soon as they would book in, they'd pay their deposit, which would pay me so I could pay my room, so the rental.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I got there, then I'd work with them for 3 hours and they'd pay up at the end of the session. And I charged it, I think it was about £250 to start with.
That's a good ROI.
Great ROI, right? It's still my time and I had to pay for the office and things.
But you're just in the beginning stages, and that's like even today, I think that a lot of people would be happy for those kind of returns. They put £20 in, get 250 out, right?
I would go back to that and do that as well. Like knowing what I know now, I'd be like, oh my word, I could. There's always like I have unfinished business with that world, of like public speaking anxiety overcoming. I'm like, oh, I could go back there and really nail that when I get some time. So I kind of, and then the next day, same thing happened. I was like, oh my God, I've cracked it. And I just started spending more and more and started to understand a little bit more about how Google works. And to the point where I was like, okay, cool. It was a mindset thing. I didn't want to spend any more than £100 a day. I thought that's just silly. Like, how much money, like, even though I was making a profit and a return, I was like, this is a mindset thing. I was like,
and this was repeatable over like how long? Like, was the span of time that
this went on for about 6 months before I started realizing I wanted to improve the results I was getting. And that was where I joined a marketing group because I thought, and I don't know, so I actually ended up joining a group in the UK, and they started talking a lot about different methodologies. Funnels weren't a thing yet, but it was much more about like, where do you find your customers from and this type of thing. And no one really knew about Google ads. And I was like, well, I'm doing this thing on Google and they were like, wow, you're getting great results. And I was like, yeah, I don't even know what I'm doing really. So I almost became the teacher of this group. And I was like, I'm just literally putting a few ads up and I managed to get clients. So it's just the good old days of Google really. Didn't have any conversion tracking. That was one thing I didn't do. So it was literally just advertising blind and hoping the phone calls would come in. I was hoping to get someone to help me understand how it works, but there weren't that many people running Google ads at the time. And then the one thing I did take away from that group was someone said, you know what you should do? You should try and get an audio on your website. I don't know if you remember back in the day where it was like, if you can get an audio MP3 player on your site.
Yeah, I do remember those days. And if you could get that to run on Ajax or something, so that was really fancy. That was like your next level.
Yeah, and I spent hours trying to work out of how to get it onto the website, and it was just impossible. As it was like you would have like an audio message from the owner of the business, and then it would be like, it almost felt like a radio ad, and then it would be like, contact us now if you want to overcome your fear of public speaking. And I was like, okay, I'm not the best at audio, and my voice sounds a bit older now, but when I was 25, it was a bit more. I definitely felt more self-conscious of the fact that if it just sounds like my voice, I'm gonna.
You should find like a speech therapist or something.
Just talk to myself in front of the mirror for a little while. Yeah. And now I've got gray hair. It's fine. I can get away with it. It's fine. But so I ended up going one better, and I remember my dad had a camcorder, so I went back to my home, picked up my dad's camcorder, and I worked out to film myself in my office, and I had a 7-minute pitch, and I look back and it's a terrible video. It used to be I used to host it on Vidler, but then Vidler changed platforms, and so I've actually lost the video of my first ever video. I'm going to try and find it again sometime. I'll contact them. But it took me.
Do you think they just destroyed it? Like,
I don't know what happened to it.
Yeah, what happens when these platforms go down?
It's cringeworthy. It's horrible. But I'd like to just as a little memento or kind of member of that time. But the down lighting was like in this strip lighting in this office. It was a nice office, but just the lighting was terrible. And I didn't have any lighting, didn't have any audio, and also I didn't have any editing skills. So I thought I had to shoot the whole thing in one take, which was a pain because it took me thousands of takes pretty much to get it right. I'm kind of glad that I did it that way, because I learned this 7-minute pitch to like the perfection. It was so good. And I remember every single word and every line, and I could like reel it off anytime I was trying to pitch anybody on any public speaking stuff. I was like, oh, this is the easiest thing to pitch now, because I just have that learn within me. So I did this video, I stuck it on my website. And by this time, I was a few months down the line, and I'd worked out what my conversion rates were, and I was trying to improve the copy on the site. I put this video on there, and my conversion rates went from about 7% of people that visited the site would contact me to 22% of people who visited the site would contact me. And I was like, wow, this video, that was the only thing. I didn't change the ad spend at all. I actually woke up the day that I put it up there, or the day after I put it up, and I had so many more people in my inbox wanting to work with us, or work with me at the time. And I was like, oh my word, the video's done it. The video's the thing. And that kind of taught me the power of the video kind of element of a conversion piece. You know, if you can have a video and it's a good video and it doesn't have to be like high production, it just needs to be a well put together video, and information rich. And so you can kind of provide value to people with a good call to action on it.
So when this happened, I'm curious, like, was your thought pattern like, oh, now I can spend less and still get the same amount of business? Or was it, now I can charge more? Or like what was your entrepreneurial mindset at the time? Where did that go to when you realized you could get so much more business with the same amount of money?
It was there. Yeah, there's a few things. I think my gut call was I wanted to reduce the cost of advertising at the time. And that's just the mindset thing. I was like, I don't want to spend £100 a day on Google ads, but now I could spend kind of £30 a day and get the same result. I thought that was a win. And the other thing I did increase my prices. So it went from about £250 per session. And I think I capped out about £800 a session. So over that time, I gained more.
Oh, that's a huge improvement. That's huge.
It's a huge improvement. Yeah. And I did so much more as well. So I started adding like products in there. So I used to film or kind of record audio. And then I don't remember, I think it's called Kunaki, where you used to be able to send off your audio, and they'll put it into like you could even send video, but I didn't do video. I just did audio, and you send it off, and then it's like print on demand CDs that they'll send back.
Oh, wow.
And it was like a mini fulfillment house. And so any session that when someone bought, as soon as they booked in, I would buy the CDs for them. And so I put this like little pack together. So by the time they left the session, I would say, here's your pack to listen to these audios to help you improve your presentation. And so that was quite cool. So kind of that cost me, I think it's like.
That gives it a lot of finesse, you know, like people walk away, they feel like, hey, this guy's got it together. You know, you're not the run of the mill, therapist in town. You're the plugged in high tech guy with video and audio and CDs. CDs, wow.
Yeah, wow, CDs. No one's got a CD player anymore, but they did back in the day. And so I had these CDs. It looked cool. I did loads of different products as well. It was like how to listen to this a week before your presentation to get confident, or listen to this when you're planning your presentation. So it was like, here's how to do the first 2 minutes and get really confident. And loads of just reminders of the sessions, basically. And so it was like a pack that people felt like, oh wow, or anytime it was like everyone come with a slight objection or an obstacle they wanted to overcome, I'd create products around that. So it'd be like, one of the best ones was overcoming your shaky voice, because everyone's got a perception that as soon as they start speaking, they're going to hear it in their voice. And so I'd say, right, here's how to warm up your voice beforehand. And I'll just like have this stack of different CDs that would be dedicated to the obstacles and the problems that people would have. And that was not a marketing ploy at all. It was more like, oh, you think you got that problem? Great. I'll solve that by creating a CD around it. So after the session, you'll feel comfortable that that's going to be handled as well. And then we started introducing group courses as well. So I'd say you can come along to our free group session as well. Like, so I just used to, like, if say, for example, I'd have 20 people in a room. I would say to them, once I've done my 20th session, I will then organize a one-day workshop where we can all get together and you can kind of be in a safe space with other people and practice. So that was another thing that people loved as well. It was like, okay, all these people have the fear of public speaking like I do. I'm like, yeah, and we're all going to get together and you can just practice. And so there's no kind of hard feelings if you muck up because everyone's in the same boat. So that was like a bonus that we added on as well.
So what was the time frame that we're looking at the beginning when you first did your Google ad? Like in that first month, do you remember roughly how much money you brought in at that, £250 a session rate?
I wouldn't be able to remember how much I brought in at that time. I know that it was ridiculously profitable because it'd be 4 out of 5 people probably who contacted me would end up buying the session. And I used to, if I didn't think they were going to buy it at the right price, like £800, I would just sell it at a slightly different price point. I just change the price point for whoever I'm talking to, just to make sure they converted. And any money was good money for me back in the day as well. So,
so did you feel at that time like, hey, I've made it, like I'm making enough, so like in 5 years I could retire if I want or something? Or like a lot of people have a different relationship with money, and some people when they hit a certain thermostat, they're just like, ooh, this is like, my friends aren't going to like me anymore. I better keep it a secret, or just kind of slow things down or something. When you're charging $800, like how long did it take to go from $250 an hour to $800 an hour?
Probably about 2 years. To just get the comfort to do it, and it helps when you have a packed diary. And so I used to kind of book out these rooms, and then I'd take them. I'll buy them up front. So I'd say, look, I'll take this room for the next 6 months, and say to the owner of the place, like, I'm taking this afternoon. So I'd have like multiple offices in London. I'd have one in Canary Wharf, one in South Kensington, and one in Clapham. And that again was great for perception. It looks like I've got 3 offices. And then I consolidated and just bought the office in Covent Garden. And that was like a more like a central, cool place to have an office. So it looks really good. And I got a good deal on that. And it was a really plush office. So I knew that things were improving, but like the only reason that was working so well is because I just filled the diary. And I was starting to get burnout, to be quite honest. I was like, it's the same thing every time, and I'm going through the same thing every time. And I didn't have the business like skills to train up another person or I had a receptionist, but that took me a long time to even get to that point. I was doing everything, and I didn't realize that I could have scaled it with more people. And this is why I say I've got unfinished business with this kind of niche. But I knew I was really good. And for me, I came from my dad's an accountant and was my accountant and still is my accountant. My brother runs a recruitment company. So we are quite an entrepreneurial family, but as an accountant, it's kind of very much like saving the pounds. And that's where I kind of got when I was like 15, I was working my dad's accountancy firm. And so I'd like be looking at how do you save money, not go spend money to scale a business. It's almost like, let's be safe. Let's not do anything silly here. And I think I probably had a bit of that. That's kind of feels like it's gone now, but there's definitely kind of keep an eye on the finances, don't go crazy. And so I kind of had that for a long time, but also it felt weird charging that much money when all my friends were in the city and were on salaries that were nothing to write home about. Well, I presume at the time it was like young professional getting into the city, and any job's going to be a good starting point,
Yeah. I mean, what you're making in a session, they're probably making in a week, right? Like a lot of these guys.
Exactly. Yeah. And it did feel weird, especially when the diary was full. But when I started getting burnout, like one of the big things I did is I booked the diary out. It was packed for like 4 weeks. And I was like, I can't take on any more business unless I used to actually just work straight into the evenings with people as well. So that was kind of like probably put the nail in the coffin, because I was like literally getting at home at around about 11 p.m. at night after doing a full day of sessions. And I'd have the next thing the next day, and I'd be like, I'm just absolutely knackered. Great money, but absolutely knackered. And then my wife, who had just trained to become a teacher, was saying, hey, look, you do know I get this like 4-week holiday 3 times a year, like, and then I get half terms as well. I get all these like holiday times. And I remember just looking at it and being like, oh my word, my wife is off for 4 weeks, and I could take 4 weeks off and not, I just book out the diary afterwards. But I had all these sessions booked up for 4 weeks. I was like, I'm not even here. I'm not even doing anything. I'm just literally working all day, every day. And I just forgot that she had these holidays that were coming up.
Yeah. And
I was like, we're going to be good money in the bank, but not having any fun with it, so to speak. And and so I kind of looked at it, and with this power of this video, I did one of these group workshops, and then there's a couple of business people in the audience, and they were like, hey, look, the reason why we're here is because we loved watching your video that promoted this workshop, and I would love to know how to do that for our business as well. I was like, oh yeah, I can show you how to do that. And so we took a bit of time out with everybody in the group to be like, I'm going to film you. And I used to have like one of those like flip cameras. I'm going to film your presentation, and then I'll give it back to you afterwards. And then they were like, well, why don't you come to my offices and we'll film like you do? And I was like, look, I'm not a video producer, but I know what I'm doing, and so I can help in that way.
But if it makes money, then business owners don't care that much how good it looks. You know, that like it works, right? Let's just keep it going. And look, I want to ask one thing right now. Like at this stage, from where at this time when you started teaching people, I feel like this is the transition point when you realized, hey, I could leverage the video side of things. Are you okay sharing like what your annual income was from your previous business? Because I think a lot of people, when they're transitioning from one thing to another, they're afraid to leave what's working for what might work better or also might fail terribly. But are you okay sharing, like, if you remember roughly what your annual income was around that time?
I think I was doing about 250 to 300,000 a year, I think.
That's pounds, right? So that's about close to $500,000 then, right?
Yeah, about $500,000 a year or something. It would have been around about that. I can't remember exactly what it was at that time, but it would have been roughly about that.
Okay, thank you.
And net profit probably would have been, I would have said after, well, it depends on how you look at net profit, but like, I would take home a profit of around about 50 grand a year after
paying yourself and everything, right?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, that's great.
It was great. Like if I could take $1,000, I was saving $1,000 a month, and $1,000 a week, and I was just like, we don't need that money. This is great to have this accumulating every week. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of how I used to look at it. And that was after ad spend and everything else and how the business functioned and things. It was a really simple business model, and it just required a lot of my time, really, more than anything else.
Do you think that if somebody who was, your younger self, like the same qualifications, same drive, they came to you today and they said, hey, I want to help people with speech, do you think that you could replicate that again? Or do you think that the market's changed so much that it'll be very difficult to get that type of scale and return again? Like a 1 or 2 person operation doing this thing?
I think I could do it again. I think there's certain niches that are somewhat unskilled and are not prepared to pay for a good agency, if that makes sense. So they'll be like a kind of a local training company that could make a lot of money from the local area. It's like, I'll just go with this cheap agency over here, and the agency gets some bad results. And I would be like, do you know what? Give me 3 months, and I can make the lead gen on this very low cost, and we can close a lot of these leads. And if we had a bunch of therapists who could handle the lead gen, or a good salesperson that could organize all of that, I think there's a big business to be built like that. Because the anxiety of public speaking is not going away. That's kind of like
and also the local factor is important. Like you're not competing against people in the States if people want to meet someone in person. So, that's an advantage that you have there. Now, I am so fascinated with your backstory, but we're running out of time. We got to jump into like what's working today. What's and I think that we're gonna have further conversations in the future, you and me. But let's talk about what's working today. What's trending, and what mistakes are you seeing, especially in the YouTube platform?
Okay, cool. So in terms of where we're at right now with the YouTube ad platform, there's so much change happening at the moment, which is so a couple of things that we discovered about 18 months ago that changed everything for us, really. So we looked at all the stats we were getting, and we realized that as you, and really it's like becoming more and more of a creative game on YouTube. So even like right now, there's a transition where if you're running conversion-based campaigns, which is what most people are running if they're doing direct response activity, they are not letting you advertise on keywords, placements, or topics any longer. So everything's going to like broader audiences, which brings a level of uncertainty because we're not sure what that future looks like. We know everyone's in the same boat, so we don't feel too bad about that. It's just we have to sharpen our saw a little bit. So there's a lot of transition happening on YouTube. But one of the things we found out about 18 months ago is that if you create ridiculously good direct response videos that you would imagine would work really well on someone like Facebook, they don't work well on YouTube. You can get them to work, but it's really hard to get those ads to work. And the reason being is because as the click-through rate improves, the number of people clicking from the number of people that see the ad run, so people clicking to the website, if that starts going up, if you create a good ad and the click-through rate goes up, normally what that means on the platform like Facebook, for example, is the CPMs will drop because it's saying, this is a good ad. People are getting to the website, having a good experience. They'll drop the CPMs because it's a good experience for everybody. Whereas on YouTube, it's the opposite. As you increase that click-through rate, your CPMs also increase. And that's because YouTube don't want people leaving the platform. So they're going to make you pay for that because that's how they make all their money, is that if you keep people on the platform, they keep on seeing ads.
Placement ads, yeah.
They'll pay for that. That's where they make their money. So when we looked at this, we're like, okay, so what we need to do then is have a lower click-through rate to lower that CPM, because it wasn't like it was a highest click-through rate is a little bit of a nudge. It would like triple, quadruple the CPM to make it impossible to run ads. And
do they disclose this, or did you have to mine that through all the data that you're seeing?
As soon as they saw it, we were like, oh my goodness, of course. But we had to have quite a lot of data to prove it out across, which we have across multiple.
Is this commonly known among YouTube advertisers, or is this something that?
Not really. Yeah, no, we've mentioned it a couple of times in publicly, but I've been so quiet because I've just been doubling down on what we're working on at the moment, that I haven't really gone out there and talked about it too much. I mentioned it, and a couple like YouTube advertisers were like, "Oh my God, we just run our numbers, and you're completely right." I'm like, "I know."
That's crazy. I think anyone listening and is like this one thing alone is a game changer to understand that relationship between CPMs and click-throughs.
Yeah, this is what got us more into the world we're in now, which is where we're saying, right, the ads we create are kind of what YouTube wants. And what everyone wants, really. No one wants to go to YouTube and see a direct response, hard-hitting ad constantly. That's kind of what everyone hates about YouTube, right? It's like the ad starts and it's like, hey, if you just give me 90 seconds or whatever, it's like, oh, shut up, skip ad. And it's not, and everyone knows it. The user doesn't like it. YouTube doesn't like it. The only person that kind of likes it is the advertiser. So when they change this, or they didn't change anything, it's just more that we discovered it. When the CPMs increased, I think there's probably more of a push that way now that competition's a little bit more. The CPMs do ramp up with click-through rates. That it means that the ads you have to create nowadays are, you want to have a low click-through rate, so your CPM drops and really plummets, so you can afford the ads. But then you only want a small number of people clicking, so they better be informed about what's happening. So when they do click, they're very likely to buy. So that's when we translate that all backwards, it means that any ad we create now is much more informative and educational and value-based. So if we create a really good experience for a user where they feel like this has been really good, cool content, even as an ad, I didn't even realize it was an ad, and then it has a call to action at the end of it, you kind of get the best of both worlds, because it means that someone likes your content, they've been watching the video, then they're going to happy to watch the call to action. And then if they're not interested, they're going to skip the ad by the time you do the offer. But some people are going to be like, actually, hang on a second, I might consider this. And then by the time you got to the end of that pitch, they're like, I want this actually. And they click and then go buy. And it's kind of moving the whole funnel onto your ad. But in order to make the ad work, it still needs to be content rich and valuable, so people will entertain the idea of receiving that pitch. So we started running ads like that, and they performed so much better, which is really exciting. And so we built this tool then, because we were like, right, we need to analyze what makes actually good content, not just gut call, but data driven, what makes great content on YouTube. And so we built this tool that pulls in all the data from the channels through the analytics API, and we can run the numbers to work out like what makes a great intro, what makes a great body section of video, what's got great watch time and percentage of view watched and good engagement, and everything we'd want to see from a metric standpoint. And then we can classify all the videos we want to look at and say, right, what content is it that's driving great retention? How is the video structured? If there's peaks in retention at any point, let's isolate that and see what's happening. We call them magic moments. So we try and pepper them into more ads we create. But we just find the best content based on retention, better it by turning it into a more of a direct response feel to it, not losing the organic essence of it, but just wrapping into a new framework. We know that content people love, but wrapping into a new framework to say this can also have a call to action on it, and it's structured perfectly, or as best you can make it. And then we don't necessarily worry ourselves too much about a long drawn out funnel. We're just like, we've done the pitch in the video, we've told people the price point before they even get there. And if they click, they're pretty much going to a quick sales page along with the checkout page and go buy. And we feel like we haven't cracked it just yet, but we feel like that's the future of YouTube, where we create really high quality content that's framed as content with a bit of a call to action on it. So it serves both purposes of being an organic video as well as an ad. It can do both, because then you get the benefit of both in your channel. You get the benefit of having an organic video and that running as an ad. And we've been doing that for a little while now. And it's always I'm going to be biased, right? But I haven't run a campaign like this before where it's, okay, cool, we can't scale it like crazy. But when we use the in-feed video ad structure and run those ads there, we're just starting out like $5 a day. And we're kind of amplifying that content just to say, let's target the right keywords, because it's more of a manual bidding. So we don't have to use conversion campaigns. And we just bid there and just put $5 a day behind really good content that you've created. And the return on ad spend is break even, we're happy with. And if we can get profit, we're really happy. But like, we didn't do it for that reason to start with. We just wanted to find the best content and amplify it and grow a YouTube channel. So we're doing that whilst we're also getting paid to do it. And when we realized how good the ROAS was, like, oh my word, we can pay to grow a great YouTube channel. And now that's what we do as an agency. We've kind of built a new agency that sits by Viewability, which is our core agency that has been for the last 8-9 years. And now we have this new arm called Bidurk, which is a strange name, I know. But Bidurk, which is like the team in there are isolating the best content, bettering that content, and putting some small ad spend behind it. It very often turns into profit. And you're growing a channel at the same time with loads of subscribers, and loads of views and high quality views, because you can just target your like perfect customer with demographic and everything else. So you're kind of isolating the perfect audience. And that's where we start everyone off now. If we want to get started with YouTube and make it work, we start there, because it's very I say very easy. I never like using the word easy. It's just simple and it works very effectively. And we start everyone off there, small scale, find out what data works, find out what content works. And then from there, we can start to build upon that and because all the things like making sure your tracking's in the right place and that type of thing, that's a kind of, we just get all that sorted. So by the time you're ready to then go into some of the bigger campaigns, you've got data, you know what targeting is working for you, you know what content works with your audience, and you know your offer converts. It's like, cool. Yeah. Now that you've got that, now let's start to explore and go a little bigger, and start to work on how do we scale that up.
That's super cool. You know, as you're speaking, the thing that keeps hitting me is that in YouTube, from what I'm gathering, the organic and the paid ads have way more overlap than, for example, what we've seen work really well on Facebook and TikTok. When you're running ads there, you got to get in and get out real quick so that you don't interrupt too much of their day, and you build that on the back of organic content, which is just lead with value, right? And here you're saying blend the two together and make it as similar as possible. That's really interesting. I love that. I love that perspective. Now, by now, if people are listening to this on audio only or watching this on YouTube, with everything you're explaining, there's probably a fair bit of people who are like, hey, this guy seems to know what he's talking about. I want to figure out how to get in touch with him. But I want to know, like kind of from the high range to the low range, what kind of ROAS are you experiencing today, this year, 2022, when people's, once you feel like you've kind of ironed out the kinks, figured out, the path to success for them, and then you tell them, hey, we're ready to start scaling this. Like, what are the metrics you're looking at for return on ad spend?
Pre-scale, you mean like on this first wave of
when you feel like you've got the balance right. And, I know with certain industries, there's a much higher ROAS than others, but, what are you experiencing in your agency today?
So I'll give you two examples because I think that it's kind of, ROAS is such a strange thing to talk about sometimes because, well, I'll explain why. So we have one where we have like a level of such consistent sales coming in around about, they come in from anywhere between $13 and around about $80, but the client can spend up to $100 per sale and happy to do so. And so from that standpoint, we're like, cool, we still keep the $80 a day, $80 per sale live because it's still working. But we are also trying to spend as much money as we can when we're getting $13 a sale. That's great, right? But what I hate doing is saying like, the product can sell for like $200 and we make it for $13. I don't want to be like, hey, you can make whatever that X ROAS is. It's just unrealistic to maintain that. It's kind of, as soon as we see great ROAS, we're like, right, we're going to spend more and that ROAS is going to dip. And so it's going to be, over time, it's not going to be quite as big as it was. So there's that kind of argument to it. So we don't like to necessarily lead people down that line of like saying, hey, with this strategy, you're going to get 10x ROAS. Otherwise, it's like 1x ROAS, like keep and break even that we're happy with because it's growing your channel. And normally it's not the first thing you sell. You've got multiple offers.
Yeah. The lifetime value is where they make their money.
Yeah. But so that's one example. And another example, they sell like a $2,000 product and we've made like 3 sales. This is a newer client. We've made like 3 sales on that and they've spent probably about $300. And we're of the mindset like, okay, cool. We don't like to talk about that ROAS because that might have been flukes. It might have been like, right, we had 3 lucky wins on a day or something. And I know that there's loads of agencies out there that says like, oh my word, 6,000x ROAS or something. And I'm like, yeah.
They have a spike and they screenshot it and put it on social media and they try to get new clients. Yeah, I've seen that too many times. And I think I've made that mistake early on, because I got excited and my enthusiasm spilled over into social media. And then when I look back, 4 or 5 years ago, I cringe at my old posts. I was like, oh, that's not the way to go anymore. And I don't know if you agree with this, but like when I work with clients, because I have a digital media agency and we manage social media, we don't do, conversion ads and stuff like that. But when people ask me what's the ROAS? I just say, hey, that's if that's the question you have, it's probably too early to work with us. And what I say is we help, we grow your brand, make a powerful brand across all platforms. It'll make your sales and marketing easier, but it will never replace it. And if you don't have a sales and marketing system in place, you got to get that before you hire us. And that's one of the first things I say before we even talk about numbers or sales or, as far as, working with us goes, because I found when I say that up front, then my clients have a much better expectation. A lot of people say, well, I don't have that quite sorted yet. And I said, great, here's some referrals. Here's some people who can help you get that sorted. And life is so much better when you're way more honest up front and tell them what will not happen. And I guess when you're young and you're desperate to make business, like you want to believe it yourself and you do believe it. And then half the time it doesn't work and you'll take any money. Well, at least I did at the beginning. And it's really tough to manage those expectations after you showed them some fancy screenshots, right? So I love how you said, we're happy to break even. If there's a spike, that could be an anomaly, right? And just don't use that as the standard that they're constantly expecting you to get for them, because your life is going to turn to hell if that's it.
Yeah, if we become like we're the 10x ROAS kind of agency or something, there's going to be a lot of people that are disappointed, because it's just not sustainable. Like, I'm like looking at this from a standpoint of like, okay, cool, our agency fees for this type of activity are not much at all, because we're saying we're taking your best content, we're improving it, and then we're going to amplify it. And what we want to do is grow your YouTube channel like 5 times faster than you're currently doing organically, but make sure that when we run ads, we do it in a way that really supports the algorithm, so it doesn't work against it. Like, if you run like loads of in-stream ads and it's got really low retention, then you're going to struggle somewhat to kind of have that support your organic. So when we optimize for when we're doing these videos that are more kind of promoting your existing content, we kind of match the same level of retention you're getting organically. So we know that it's more of the same, if not better, traffic that you're currently getting. So we're super conscious about that, and that's why it's difficult to scale it, because you can't be everywhere. But if you've got like 20 videos all on promotion, then and it's kind of working equally as well as your organic, if not better, you just grow the channel really quickly. And if you make some sales off the back of that and it's break even, then great. If you're making profit, amazing. And that happens a lot. But I'm not saying like, I just don't want people to get like to this point where they're like, okay, cool, this is the strategy where I'm going to make all my money. It's like, no, this is a strategy that's going to grow your brand and get you out there, and so everyone knows about you, and you'll get so many more opportunities than you probably currently have. But like, the power of a big YouTube channel is insane. Like, people will look at that and be like, right, how can I book you in for this podcast, this speaking gig? How do and now I've seen that your conversion rates improve and people are starting to search for you, and brand search works better, and everything kind of flows from that. Yeah. And I think YouTube as a platform is just so strong that if you can pay to grow and you get paid along the way profitably to do it, that's kind of what we aim for. So we look at it from a standpoint of like, let's try and grow your brand, and everything that comes with having a big brand is what we're aiming for, whilst trying to make it a break-even exercise so you can just go quicker.
That makes so much sense. And typically, what kind of clients do you like to work with the most? The ones that you've seen success with and generally are taking the most of? Like, what industry is that?
So industry-wise, we're kind of we worked with a lot of people across multiple industries, and we like working with people that are kind of super passionate about what they're doing, which is a lot of people, right? But like we want to have them have a digital course or a kind of an online course that they can sell, and it's a good course. But the beauty of and we go after YouTubers as well, like people who have YouTube channels that have maybe like 50 plus videos. That's kind of our sweet spot, so we can really help those people. But when they have 50 plus videos, the thing is they're normally great on video. And if they talk about a subject matter for 50 videos and continue to do it, they're normally an expert and can create amazing courses. So you kind of find that people just self-select themselves as soon as they have kind of a rather large YouTube channel that they're also selling online courses, or at least monetizing their traffic by services like agencies or something along those lines, where you can provide that service to people. And if they can create that content, wow, we can really help them. So we're not necessarily looking for like one particular niche that we go after. It's just we want them to be course creators, and we're happy for them to, as long as there's enough traffic on YouTube to make it quite a viable platform for them. That's kind of what we're aiming for.
Amazing. And you're going to have no shortage of people like that, at least, every single year. I think I don't know if it's quite exponential, but I feel like it's getting there to where people are just flooding in again. I feel like there's a second wave happening. We have the top tier influencers who are telling people create better content, build your channels. There's an intrinsic value to fame, like that message is getting out there. So I think that those people, a lot of them are going to fall right into your lap.
Well, yeah, I think the problem is that most people have is they hear this and they kind of start creating their content and they're like, I got 3 views last month or whatever, and they're kind of like, how do I get this to be less embarrassing, or how do I get a bit more scale going on here? And
that makes so much sense.
Yeah, and so like when you can put some spend behind it, it just means that you just immediately get past that hump, of like saying, I've done 50 videos and it's going well, but I wish it was going faster. That's kind of where you start putting some ad spend behind it and really start growing it. But you're spending on the platform you're on, so you're getting exactly the right traffic through to your videos. So it really supports that organic growth. The traffic doesn't necessarily interfere with the organic, but by getting lots more subscribers and getting people back and seeing your videos, and you're just growing that presence on your YouTube channel. And that's we see that as being the future, because if you can nail that down whilst also creating content that has that framework that sells your products and you're making money as you go, you can spend as much as you can to grow as quickly as you can. And that's like a really, really strong place to be. And for me, YouTube's the biggest platform for this type of thing. I know there's massive channels as well, but I think that like the impact you can have on YouTube is such that, I don't know, I would get starstruck if I saw some of the people that I know on YouTube that I follow. There's different people there that just probably just like me, who's sitting behind a computer most of the day, just doing their job well. But there's that kind of fame element to it where you I've seen you on YouTube, and it's like, feels like you've really connected with somebody online. But I get it quite a bit where they say, I've watched your YouTube channel videos for years. I think you've said you've watched a lot of my YouTube channels or something.
I did. And I went and I was looking the other day for the really early stuff. And it's really interesting. It's a biography that's out in public a little bit, if you've been doing it for a long time.
You sent me a video from like 10 years ago or something, or 11 years ago or something, where I was
showing how to use a green screen. That was cool. that was new technology, at the time.
Use your flip camera and use the green screen in the background. That was as bad as it got. So I was, so nowadays we're kind of saying like, if you can amplify your content, you get over that hump and you can find YouTube a lot more enjoyable, and you can grow that much faster. And we feel like we're really in a good place with where we're at, and providing a lot of people with great service. And YouTube is a direct response mechanism. If you dive into that immediately, talking about some of the mistakes that people make, if you dive into like trying to make $1 turn into $3 at scale, it's a lot of people fail doing that. It's hard. You've got to have a great ad. You've got to have a great offer that you can afford. And so that's why a lot of high ticket people do quite well on YouTube. But even then, they've got to have their funnel dialed in. They've got to have a really great message, and it's kind of reserved for people that have got all their crap together. Like those are the people that would be able to play on that platform. And still, it's difficult, as well as all the things that are changing on YouTube. And that's we still have that agency, and that agency's still going well. But it's like it's not as easy to get wins as people might think. And so it takes a lot of expertise to get that done, which is luckily what we have in the agency. But 9 years helps with that. But for people getting started, I would say get like the groundwork done first. Like do great content and put like a bit of a spin of a call to action on some of your content, and then promote something that is like $50, $100. So it's not a big decision by the time they've come from YouTube, but do the whole sales pitch on YouTube, because if you ask people to click through to the website, 2% of people will do that. And then people get through the site and see your offer. Maybe 5% of people get to that point. So you're dealing with a lot of wastage. So it's like 5% of the 2%. There's not very many people getting through to actually hear what your offer is. So if you front load it and put on your YouTube channel, on an actual YouTube video, you're going to have like 16% of people that started your video actually see your pitch. That's a huge number compared to no one actually ever seeing your pitch. And I think a lot of coaches and people like that kind of coming to that mindset is like, no one ever even hears the pitch that people have. And so by putting in the video itself and thinking through that, and then pulling people straight through to an easy sales page and a conversion page, like a checkout page, that is the formula I'd recommend for pretty much anyone to get started on this platform.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. You shared so much. I know we're going a little bit over time. What's the one mistake you're seeing people starting into this space? And I know you've said a lot, but if there's one more word of advice, someone wants to get into YouTube, and besides contacting you and watching your YouTube channel and watching all the stuff you put out there, if you could encapsulate that into something like, if you do anything, do this first, what would that be?
If you could do anything now with YouTube, I'd say create one piece of content that you think is the most powerful content you could ever deliver. So let's say, for example, you have an opportunity to present on stage in front of all your ideal candidates and you have 45 minutes. What are you going to say in that video, in that presentation? You've got to wow your audience, give them value, and you're probably going to have a call to action in that presentation. And if it's 45 minutes and you think that's kind of crammed in and that's kind of all your stuff, put that onto video. If it's 45 minutes, I'll break it into 3 15-minute videos and link them together. That's actually how I'd recommend everybody do it. And say, just create your core video content that's like, you put your heart and soul into that and you feel so proud of it. Get that done onto YouTube and then work out how to run in-feed video ads to promote that content. And if it's good content and you know your customers are going to love it, you're well on your way to success, because then everything else you do can feed back into those 3 videos and people can get to binge watch you, leave loads of comments, like your content. And it's like your pillar of where you send your traffic through to, and it's got call to actions on it as well. Like if you create that set of 3 videos, or it can just be one really solid core video, you're going to have everything you probably need to make a real big impact on YouTube. And that's where I'll get started.
Thank you so much for that, Tom. And if somebody, after listening this long, they've been sitting here for a whole hour listening to you, they're probably at some level interested in figuring out how to work with you. What's the best place for people to find you and contact you about that?
Okay, cool. So if you're a YouTube channel owner and you have 50 plus videos, or let's say 30 plus videos, go to bidurk.com, which is bidurk.com, as we'll do a X-ray for you. And for a limited time, we're doing them for free, which is where we can plug in our software to your channel, analyze it, and we'll jump on a call to talk all through, and you can see what's going. If you're not quite there just yet and you haven't got 50 videos, but you're kind of wanting to find out more about how you can promote yourself, or if you've got a massive business but you haven't ever focused on YouTube before, you might want to go to Viewability, our other agency, which is Viewability, VIEW, and then the word ability.co.uk. That's another place to go. Or just reach out on Messenger and just say, hey, I listened to you on Ken's podcast and had some questions. I'm happy to field those questions as well.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. And everybody who's listening, if you're listening to the audio, check out the show notes in the podcast. It is worth it. Just pause for a second and scroll down. If you're watching on YouTube, check out the description. We'll drop all those links there right below, including links to all his social media so that you can easily get in touch with him personally. Tom, thank you so much. I appreciated this not only because I think that this is great content for my listeners, but also because I have not understood YouTube at nearly the level that you haven't spent nearly the amount of time you have. So for me personally, this was a lot of eye openers and things that, I'm going to start using right away. Helping my clients. And I think a lot of the stuff you said is not just for YouTube. It's some things are quite universal and they can be applied across other platforms as well.
Definitely. The video that you create, that really good video, can be used on Facebook really effectively as well. There's other strategies for that. Maybe we've got to do another call for that one sometime. There's other ways of using the content you do. So yeah, it works for a lot of platforms. But I'm going to shut up now. You carry on, Ken. You're doing your sign off.
Oh, good. Well, guys, if you enjoyed this, then make sure that you just click below. Just give me your comments on what you loved about it, what you'd love to hear more about on this channel. And other than that, I will see you next time. Thanks, Tom.